Good evening, and thank you for joining me. My name is Ryan, and this is the first episode of Horror on Location. In this series, I am going to be talking about some of my favorite horror media, ranging from movies to TV shows to video games, and I'm going to be recording it from inside some of the most haunted houses and hotels in the country. Today, I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite horror movies from 1999, The Blair Witch Project, and I'm going to be recording it from inside my hotel room at the Queen Anne Hotel in San Francisco, California. This hotel is a repurposed boarding school from the late 19th century, opened by Miss Mary Lake, who opened the school and ran it for about 6 or 7 years before it had to shut down. Local myths about this hotel say that the spirit of Miss Mary Lake still inhabits these halls. Ever committed to caring for the inhabitants inside, guests have reported having their suitcases packed and unpacked for them, or being tucked into bed at night, as well as other just regular paranormal reports like chills and hearing sound and footsteps and things like that. According to the local legend, most hauntings occur on the 4th floor, especially in or around room 410, which was Miss Mary Lake's old office. And that is the room that I am staying in tonight and filming in right now. With that being said, let's talk a little bit about the history of this building and Miss Mary Lake herself. Miss Mary Lake was the daughter of a wealthy lawyer from Northern California who moved to the city. Mary was a passionate educator and had a school inside the city before moving to this current building, which was built specifically for her and her all-girl boarding school. Now, in the late 19th century, a single woman running and operating an entire all-girls school by herself must have seemed a little strange. At one point, the San Francisco Chronicle published a gossip article where they accused Mary Lake of being in a secret affair with an ex-senator named James Graham Fair, who was a millionaire that struck it big with the Comstock Lode and then had a really successful career as a politician. The gossip article alleged that the two were having a sort of extramarital affair, and that was the reason why the senator was funding the school like he was. These accusations are not really founded in any truth. It was really just gossip. Some say there was some kind of connection between the two, but it very well could have just been explained by the fact that Senator James Graham Fair probably just knew of Mary Lake's father and had some mutual acquaintances and saw it as politically beneficial for him to fund her school. But Mary was much more than just an exciting mistress. She was a very successful socialite and was very involved in many of the political and social movements occurring in the city at the time, especially surrounding women's rights and their involvement in education. In one article, she was quoted as saying, "Nearly all our school teachers are women, and there is certainly no logic in saying that women are not of value in the board when we entrust the education of our children to them." She would continue to advocate for these causes even after her school was closed. The school closed in 1896 during the economic panic of 1896. At that point, Mary Lake, heartbroken, had to sell all of the furniture and everything inside of the building. She had to give up the building to be leased as a gentleman's club, which is very tragically ironic. And she moved to New Jersey to go live with her sister, and she was there for 2 years before passing away on her birthday at the age of 55. I think it's interesting because ghosts are sort of seen as dead souls that are still stuck on Earth and they can't move on to the afterlife. A question that I sort of asked myself was, if Miss Mary Lake passed away all the way on the other side of the country in New Jersey, why would her ghost be inhabiting this place? I think the answer is pretty simple. If ghosts really are leftover souls or spirits that are left over from humans, it doesn't really make sense that they would only inhabit the place where they died. If that was the case, then hospitals would be the most haunted places in America by far, because that's where most people actually die. I think if there is such a thing as the soul, that it stands to reason that the soul can be tethered or chained to a place just as easy it could be chained to another person, like a soulmate. So if you sort of follow that logic, it makes sense that if a place was very close to the person's heart and soul, like this school was to Miss Mary Lake, it stands to reason that if her soul was going to be stuck here, it would be stuck here in this building. One of the reasons I chose this hotel over some of the other options that I had, two reasons. One, Miss Mary Lake is, by all accounts, supposed to be a friendly ghost and an accommodating ghost. And two, I just love San Francisco. This is a beautiful city and it's got lots of history. San Francisco is filled with old Victorian buildings just like this one that have stood the test of time and been repurposed and renovated into modern buildings. So this building is not stick out very much, but when you go inside, it is absolutely amazing. I mean, this place is completely furnished with authentic Victorian furniture, antiques. I mean, you just look around and it is just so beautiful. Not like any other modern hotel lobby that I've ever seen. The room itself lends to that beauty as well. It's furnished with all kinds of sort of Victorian era looking furniture. The building itself is obviously very old. I mean, you can just look anywhere at any time and feel it. Walking around this place, I could just feel how old it was and the history behind it. It was very sombering to think about all of the people that must have walked these halls, all of those students, and maybe even the gentlemen and the gentlemen's club, and who knows who else. And obviously, I'm staying in room 410, which is where Miss Mary Lake spent so much of her time as she was committed to this mission of educating these young girls. Let's go back in time a little bit. Let's go to the entire opposite side of the country. Let's go to the small town of Burkittsville, Maryland, which is built atop the ancient colonial town of Blair. Now, this land is absolutely cursed, and folklore talks of a woman whose feet don't touch the ground, that kidnaps children and commits ritual sacrifices. That is all, of course, according to the mythos created by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, who are the filmmakers that created the Blair Witch Project. Not only did they create the Blair Witch Project, they created the entire myth of the Blair Witch in its entirety. The colonial town of Blair does not exist. There is no myth that speaks of a witch like that. I'm sure they borrowed from things like the witch trials and sort of miscellaneous colonial history like that, but it's all from the ground up. The Blair Witch Project released in theaters in 1999 following one of the most original and effective marketing campaigns that we have ever seen in movie history. This marketing campaign was so effective that most of the country was seriously looking around and asking themselves, is this real? Are we seriously looking at the tapes of 3 dead or missing people? We take it for granted now how easy it is to look things up. If someone tried to run this marketing campaign today, it would be very easy to Google it and find all kinds of forums of all the reasons that this is fake and not real and totally debunked and just a cheap marketing ploy. If we go back to 1998, before the movie came out, the internet was a totally different place. The filmmakers created a website called BlairWitch.com, which was sort of a database of all this information about these 3 missing filmmakers named Heather, Josh, and Mike. The website had police reports and timelines of their last whereabouts. It had pictures of these film reels that were supposedly discovered. It really looked like the website of somebody who was actually searching for this people. This website was incredibly effective. People all over the internet were discussing, is this real? They had forums. There was people going to Maryland to see if they could find them. It was all taken very seriously. So not only is there this massive buzz because of this website on the internet, just 2 days before the movie releases in theaters, a documentary releases on the Sci-Fi Channel called The Curse of the Blair Witch, which talks about this really intricate mythos and story behind this legendary creature and also these missing filmmakers. And this documentary was also made by the filmmakers. It's really incredible, and it's all made up. It's all fake. It was all completely fabricated by the 2 filmmakers to build up hype for this movie. This movie is the first mainstream example of a found footage horror movie, in which we look at the film not from behind a studio camera, but from a sort of first-person view of the character inside of the film. In this case, there's actually 2 cameras. There's one filming the documentary, and then there's one held via a digital camcorder. And there had never really been anything like this in the mainstream, not even close. So it was this really unique and very raw way to release this film. The fact that it had this sort of angle of this found footage, the website and the fake documentary and all of the buzz around this movie, the found footage element obviously sort of sealed the deal so that even when you're seeing it in theater, you're still not entirely sure if what you're watching is fictional or if you are really watching the lost footage of 3 dead or missing filmmakers. And by the way, on the IMDb pages of these 3 actors at the time, it said on the website that they were missing or deceased. They took this incredibly seriously. The film's 3 main actors, named Heather, Josh, and Mike, those are their real names, they were basically in hiding. I mean, they did not promote the movie, they didn't talk about the movie, and it kind of ended up biting them, but we'll get to that. So let's talk about the movie itself. I'm going to talk about the plot. I'm going to try not to use too many spoilers so that if you haven't seen it, you can see it yourself. The film centers around these 3 student filmmakers named Heather, Mike, and Josh, who are traveling to Maryland to film a documentary about this Blair Witch. The Blair Witch only exists in the mythos of the movie, but no one really knew that at the time. The film begins with them sort of going into Burkittsville, Maryland to talk to some locals about the curse of the Blair Witch and the lore and the mythos, and naturally they receive some very ominous stories and warnings from the locals. They talk about a bunch of supernatural events that have happened throughout the last years. They talk about a serial killer that killed these kids and these sacrifices. And like true horror movie protagonists, the 3 student filmmakers are completely undeterred and proceed into the Black Hills, which is a very ominous name for the woods that they go into. So they go out into the woods and they stay out there for a few nights, and each night things get progressively scarier and weirder, and they are basically stalked and harassed by presumably this mythical creature or someone doing her bidding. Again, I'm trying not to give away too much because I think so much of this movie is when you see it for the first time and feel that dread and suspense. At the end of the movie, one of the crew members goes missing and they track him down to this abandoned house. I'm not going to give it away, but the final shot of this film is one of the most terrifying and unsettling scenes in any movie I've ever seen. And if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is scary. What's really amazing about this movie, and I mentioned it before, was that it had really blended lines between sort of fiction and reality. Obviously, this is just made a screenplay by the 2 filmmakers, but there was no script. They had everything improvised by the 3 main actors. They would sort of give them like key points of who their characters were and what they were feeling and their motivations, and sort of give them a general direction to go, but everything else was completely made up to them. On top of that, the filmmakers thought it necessary to not tell the crew that they were going to be scaring them at night. So a lot of the scenes you see where things are attacking the tent or they hear footsteps or sticks cracking, that is all real, and their reactions are real because they don't know that it's the directors that are doing that to them. And again, one really unique element about this movie is the fact that everything that you see being filmed is filmed by the actors. There is no studio, there's no cameraman, it's them. It's them holding the camera and filming it. So this whole movie is a massive labor of love, and all of the hard work eventually pays off. This movie has a reported budget of ranging between $50,000 to maybe $100,000, $250,000 after all of the marketing, and it ends up making $250 million in the box office. It is a massive, massive success, in no small part due to the huge marketing campaign and all of the buzz around the authenticity of the movie. More importantly than the money, though, I think what was so amazing about this film was that it was this really nice breath of fresh air into the horror movie genre, especially for indie horror. The sort of golden era of like the slasher from the 80s and 70s was over, and there was a bit of a lull in these movies, especially indie horror movies. We look around today in the 2020s and all we see are these masterpiece indie horror movies, and so much of that is the credit of the success of this movie. And on top of being important to horror movies as a whole, it created this entire subgenre of found footage horror. Less than a decade later, 2 huge, huge movies using the found footage subgenre come out, Cloverfield and Paranormal Activity, and both of those make tons of money. So while it's easy to talk about all of the great things that this film does and its incredible legacy, there is some downside to it. The 3 main actors that played Heather, Mike, and Josh, as I said, did not get to promote this movie or promote themselves as the movie was coming up. This movie sort of killed their careers. The long story short is, because of the marketing of the movie and the nature of how that marketing worked and the sort of deception behind it, these 3 did not get to do the usual promotion that actors do to sort of set themselves up for future roles. In 2024, Variety interviewed the 3 actors, and all 3 of them said that they were never paid. And again, this movie made $250 million. And on top of that, these 3 weren't just actors. I mean, they were filming, they were basically directing, they were writing a script and doing it as they went. It's a really bitter ending for what was really such a amazing and unique acting performance by all three of them. I think what I love about this movie more than anything else, more than its originality and the history behind it, it's two things. One, I love the idea of being scared of something that you cannot see. There's a lot of horror movies where we are very scared of what we can see, whether it's a serial killer like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees, or it's this awful monstrosity like The Thing or a xenomorph. It's easy to see why we would be terrified of that, because they are terrifying creatures. But sometimes the human imagination and what it can conjure up is infinitely worse. I'm going to be talking about a couple spoilers, so skip ahead if you do not want to hear that. In this movie, we obviously never see the Blair Witch. We never get any idea of what she looks like or her characteristics or anything like that. We are sort of just imagining what she looks like and what she will do to them, and it is horrifying. And again, the ending of this movie, which is the scariest scene of all, is scarier than many scenes from many other horror movies, and all it is a person standing in a corner. I don't know if it was the filmmaker's intention, but I thought it was really genius to have him standing in the corner facing away, because it really reflects that theme of the terror of what we cannot see. Imagine being in the shoes of somebody who is facing a corner in a dark cellar, haunted by who knows what, and they cannot see what is behind them. They can only imagine. How terrifying is that? What I'm trying to say is that sometimes less is more, and in this case, it works so good. Again, I absolutely love this movie, and I think everybody who is a fan of horror movies should see it at some point in their life. You won't get the same experience as the people who saw it in theaters in 1999, but I assure you the movie is still just as terrifying as it was back then. Okay. Like I mentioned before, I am sort of a paranormal agnostic. I don't necessarily believe in ghosts, but I also don't necessarily not believe in ghosts. I will say that since I've been here, I can feel the age of this place and I can feel the history of this place, but I'm not sure if I've felt anything paranormal per se, aside from some chills that I got earlier when I was talking about Mary Lake. My main goal here is not to hunt a ghost like Mary Lake. I don't think you can really hunt them. I think that's kind of a silly notion. I'm not going to be sitting in front of a night vision camera jumping at any bump that I hear in the night and pretending that it's her trying to communicate with me. I'm not that narcissistic. But if there is any kind of paranormal activity, I would like to detect it and see if it can be explained. So I brought some equipment. Really high-tech stuff here. I've got this cat toy, which lights up when it moves. So I'm going to be setting these on the ground and recording throughout the night, and if something moves them, something paranormal, they should light up. I've also got this handy dandy recorder, which has some pretty sensitive microphones. I'm gonna be walking around the room to see if I can get any EVPs. With that being said, let's get to investigating. Okay, so I am going to be walking around the room really quick. This is the room itself. The room itself is not very big. You pretty much just come in here, walk in, nice terrifying mirror. This is just a closet. No ghosts yet. I can't really see. Maybe there is. This is the bed and all my equipment. This is, like I said, my little makeshift studio. In here is the bathroom. It's nice. I mean, it's got a bidet, which is really cool. I'm really happy about that. Another mirror. Just all kinds of cool little antiques and artifacts. I also got this nifty thing. It's a thermometer. Maybe I'm just going a little bit too into phasmophobia, but as you can see, it's a cool 71. I'll keep this nearby just in case I feel a chill. Okay, so I've got my digital recorder right here. It's pretty sensitive, I think, to sound, so hopefully this will pick up any EVPs if that is the case. So I'm gonna just kind of walk around the room and I don't know. We'll see what happens. Okay, so it's a little darker in here. You can kind of see my silhouette, but again, we're just going to kind of go through and see what we get. Okay, Mary. Are you in here, Mary? Mary, are you in here? Can you talk to me? Mary, if you're here, can you say something? Mary, are you here? Mary, if you're here, can you please say something? Oh, shit. I just got cold. I'm going to check the... Oh, it's the same temperature. It's the same temperature as before, so nothing exciting. I did feel a little bit of a chill. Mary, are you in here? Is that you? Are you trying to say something? Mary, are you here? I don't think Mary would be in the restroom. I guess I don't know for sure. I do kind of get a weird vibe in there. Mary, are you in here? Well, I'll review that in a little bit. Guys, if I'm being completely honest, I'm really I am getting some heebie-jeebies here. I don't think it's, I don't know, maybe I'm just psyching myself out. Okay, so I'm about to go to bed for the night. I've got my other phone set up here on a time lapse, and I've got these two little balls that when you move them, they light up. There's another one over here. So as you can see, if something moves it in the middle of the night, this time-lapse camera should capture it. So we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, I'm gonna get some sleep and hopefully won't be awoken by any vicious spirits. Good morning, everyone. Well, it's the next morning, and I slept through the entire night. I didn't have any paranormal awakenings, no scary sounds or sights or anything really like that. I reviewed all the footage from my phone's time-lapse video, and unfortunately, none of my high-tech ghost traps went off, so nothing there either. There were definitely some bumps in the night and creaks and stuff like that, but this building is very old. It's over 100 years old, so that is kind of to be expected. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little disappointed in some part of me that I didn't get such a clear-cut paranormal experience, but I also at the same time wasn't really expecting one. With that being said, this room definitely has some kind of presence. I don't really know how to explain it, but it does have a certain stillness to it, and the building as a whole just feels hollowed in some way. Again, maybe it's because of how old it is and how many people have walked through it, even in its most recent history, but I just can't really shake it. It doesn't feel like anything sinister or evil, and it doesn't really feel kind and welcoming either. It's just there. It's just something, as if something is here. I don't know if it's Miss Mary Lake or something else. Nonetheless, the results of this investigation are inconclusive at best. I don't feel like I've ruled anything out, but I also haven't concluded for certain that there is a paranormal thing going on here. I would highly recommend that anybody in the San Francisco area who's staying here overnight come and check this place out. It's a very, very, very beautiful hotel. It's very accommodating. It's very affordable. Overall, this has been a very fun experience, and I'm very glad I did it. I'm incredibly grateful to the Queen Anne Hotel for letting me stay in this specific room and for being so accommodating. Anyways, I hope that you will come and join me on my next trip. I'll be visiting some other hotels in California and maybe even the rest of the country that have its own folklore and local legend and hauntings. I'll be talking about some more movies, and I'll also explore some other horror media like TV shows and video games that I really, really love, and I'll do a deep dive discussion on them. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Thank you again to the Queen Anne Hotel for letting me stay here, and I hope you'll join me for the next Horror on Location.